Cardiff, capital of Wales, has a history that dates back some 6,000 years. Naturally, it's amassed a lot of folklore and legends in all that time. They're not always ancient stories either. According to Reddit, if of course we can take that as an accurate source, there's a legend of the Beast of Leckwith. In this story, the beast is a panther that was released after its owner realised panthers don't make particularly good pets, and there have been sightings ever since. Another Reddit user related a particularly creepy tale in which he was apparently followed through Bute Park near Cardiff Castle at night, and he believed the figure to have been connected to the Dominican monastery that once stood on the site. These are just a couple of the examples, and there is far more to Cardiff than I can possibly fit into a single podcast episode, but we are going to explore some of its ghost stories and other tales in this week's episode of Fabulous Folklore. Hello there and welcome to Fabulous Folklore, the podcast for all things folklore, occult and just a bit weird. I'm your host Icy Sedgwick, blogger, fantasy author and your guide into these rather mysterious realms. I've got some rare things to show you, so come on in, take a look around, but be careful not to touch anything. These things sometimes bite. Well, hello there, and welcome back to Fabulous Folklore with me, your host, Icy Sedgwick. We are continuing with Folklore of the UK Capitals Month this week, and we're off to Cardiff in Wales. Now, I have been to Wales on holiday a few times, most notably in the north of Wales, so I've never actually been to Cardiff, but after doing all of this research, I really want to go now. So there's that. I can't remember which part of Wales it was that my ancestors come from, and I think that might have been North Wales, but never mind. We're going to crack on with Cardiff folklore, and we're going to start off with ghosts, because of course we are, it's me we're talking about. Now, Cardiff Castle actually boasts plenty of weird stories, as you would expect any self-respecting castle to do, and many of them do indeed involve ghosts. Just to give you a little bit of background, Robert Fitzhammond, Lord of Gloucester, originally built a wooden Motte and Bailey castle on the site in the 11th century. This was then rebuilt in stone, but much of the current castle actually dates to the Victorian era, which explains its Gothic revival styling. Now, some of the ghosts aren't exactly at the spectacular end of the spectrum, and staff have apparently reported items in the stockroom moving on their own, or apparently moving on their own. And there's a faceless woman who wanders around the castle. People have called her Sarah, and she is sometimes seen in the stockroom, so perhaps she does her own reorganising of the contents. But it really starts to get more into the traditional supernatural territory, as it were, with the second Marquis of Bute, and the Bute family being one that owned the castle for quite a long time. He apparently wanders through the walls, and he heads from the library fireplace towards the chapel. Now, given the fireplace was a doorway when he lived in the castle, it is possible that the other walls also held doors, so he's not actually walking through the walls in his view, but obviously that's what it looks like to us. Now, the main dining room doors apparently open and close on their own at 3:45 a.m, even if they're locked, and lights flicker and furniture moves inside the same room as well. And the Great Castle's website suggests that the Marquis's wanderings and the dining room doors movement are connected because the Marquis died at 3:45 a.m. He even appeared to a young couple in the castle in 1976. They'd apparently been standing on a staircase when a tall, cloaked man pushed past them. The woman had turned to look at the man, who scowled at her before vanishing. Now, if you're wondering how she knew who the figure was, apparently there was a painting of him nearby, and she identified him thus. The very fact that the figure in the painting was wearing the same red cloak as the figure that they saw could perhaps suggest that it was some kind of optical illusion or trick of the light that made her see something or think she'd seen something that she'd actually seen in a painting earlier. That is a possibility, but I wouldn't like to necessarily pour scorn on somebody's story, as I wasn't there. But it is something that we do need to bear in mind with stories like that. And indeed, in earlier centuries, a phantom coach apparently trundled towards the gate. And this particular story I came across a couple of times, but there is a little bit of a problem with it, because this phantom coach apparently was heard whenever one of the Bute family was about to die. Now, some websites say it was last heard in November 1868 during the tenure of the third Marquis of Bute. John Boyle, a trustee of the family, apparently heard a carriage enter the courtyard and then stop outside the door. Now, he didn't then hear the doorbell, which you would assume that you would do if somebody had turned up, so he went down to the hall to see who it was, but the butler told him that no one had actually arrived. Apparently Lady Margaret McRae, the only daughter of the third Marquis, allegedly heard the same carriage the evening her father died at Dumfries House. Now, it's a nice story, but the problem is, if the coach was last heard in 1868, the third Marquess actually died in 1900, so it's not really clear how true that story is. Some people say that when it was heard in 1868, it was actually for a cousin of the Marquess, but again, it gets a little bit fuzzy as to who. And then the one with the Marquess in 1900, it's not clear where Lady Margaret McCrae was when she actually heard the coach, so it's possible that she actually wasn't at the castle. But as I say, there's not enough details given with these little anecdotes for us to be able to piece them together properly. In the end, though, the 5th Marquess of Bute actually gave the castle to the people of Cardiff in 1947. So we're going to move on from the castle to the hospital, because I suddenly realised it's something that we haven't really covered that much on the podcast. And there I am using that royal we again. I'm literally the only one who does this. But I've never really covered like hospital ghosts. So I did think that could be quite an interesting theme, not for an entire month because that would just be weird, but potentially for like, I don't know, institutionalized ghosts, if that makes sense. So like haunted prisons, haunted hospitals, things like that. So do let me know if you would be interested in that. But for now, we're looking at Cardiff Royal Infirmary Hospital, and if you look at this in the pictures, it looks like one of those proper Victorian piles that would be super creepy at night, and kind of a little bit intimidating if you arrived at them during the day. It actually opened in 1822, and the hospital really does seem to have more than its fair share of ghost stories, and it's actually been dubbed the UK's most haunted hospital as well. Now, in one story, plumber Douglas Bragg had a somewhat weird experience while he was carrying out work in an old ward, because there has been quite a lot of building work over the years, and like bits of the hospital have moved out to other hospitals, and then other services have moved back and so on. So there seems to be quite a lot of stuff around workmen and security guards in these stories. But anyway, Douglas was working in this old ward, and he kept feeling as though he was being watched, except whenever he looked up, there was no one there. He even heard footsteps at one point, until eventually he actually felt someone put their hand on his shoulder. When he finally turned, he saw a matron dressed in a grey uniform. Apparently she looked at him, and then she smiled, and then she disappeared into thin air. On his way to see the security guard to ask if there was anyone in the area who shouldn't be, he saw a painting of a former matron, and lo and behold, it was the woman he'd seen. Now, the article that I read did get a little bit confusing because it said that she was wearing quite old-fashioned clothes, but then said that she died in 2008, so I'm not sure about that one. But that story was a bit of an odd one in the sense that you don't necessarily get a sense of peril from a ghost that smiles at you, but I just thought it was quite cool that he could apparently at least work out who she was. Whereas in another story, security guard Gareth Owen was watching the security monitors in 2008, so there's that year again, when he watched a woman go into the security office some 12 yards away from him. Now obviously he was like, why on earth is she going in there? She shouldn't be. But 5 minutes later she came back out again. Now he was watching all of this on the monitors, and he watched her come out of the security office and then walk right past him. Except if he was actually looking up into the corridor, there was no one there as far as he could see. Now, Owen did describe that her style was smart but outdated, but that seems to be as far as that one went. So whether she's just a ghost wandering the corridors, perhaps she knew that room as something different from the security office, it's possible. But other figures also apparently wander the corridors, and there is a woman in grey, although some people say that she wears white, and according to local legend, she would offer you a drink, and you should actually decline it because if you don't, you would die within the week. She apparently stood at the end of the beds offering this drink of water to patients. One woman apparently actually complained to her doctor about the woman, and thankfully, as far as I can gather, didn't seem to take this offer to drink, but that was something worth bearing in mind about that, and I thought that was an interesting story in that she kind of seems to act like a death omen, but given she takes the appearance of a nurse, it's a strange way that one appears, so that was quite an interesting story. There were other staff who always kept a partitioning curtain open in one of the operating theatres. It had been known to close by itself, and whenever it was closed, strange noises would come from behind it, but only when it was closed, and people could never work out what these strange noises were. There are various other stories which include children who tap people on the ankles as they walk upstairs. There's also legends of military ghosts and things like that, so it does seem like the kind of building where people have gone in and they've never actually left again. But the one that really fascinates me, and if anyone listening knows more about this, please do let me know. I won't necessarily share it on the podcast, this is just for my own personal curiosity, but in one of the stories, and again this was actually shared in a newspaper in 2021, The staff on the pathology ward actually had an exorcism done in the early 2000s. No one's ever talked about their experiences. According to the paper, nobody even spoke to each other about it. So nobody knows what actually needed to be exorcised or if it even worked. But as I say, that's the kind of thing that you do that when you're really at the end of your tether. So I would be fascinated to know more about that if anyone actually knows what that relates to. Now we're going to take a little bit of a detour from a haunted hospital. And as I say, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, I need to have a look at more folklore about hospitals in general. But we're going to have a look at tunnels. Now, I have covered tunnels before. There is an episode of that. But I haven't covered the ones in Cardiff. And again, part of this came from Bethan because I know she loves things underground. And she did actually sort of send me some of this as well. But apparently there's a medieval tunnel that runs under Bute Park, and it's believed to be connected with the old Greyfriars Friary, which dated to 1280 until it was destroyed in 1540 during the dissolution of the monasteries. In 1582, Sir William Herbert bought the ruins and built Greyfriars House on the site, using some of the stonework from the original building. The only remains of the friary visible above ground are place names such as Greyfriars Road, except the tunnel beneath the area is said to still remain, and a 2-foot access tunnel apparently leads into it. Now, according to one article from 2017, it's only passable until about 82 feet in because the tunnel collapsed, but it's believed to eventually reach the friary in Bute Park. Nobody knows why the friars would have used such a tunnel, although it's possible it was used more for emergency evacuations by the monks than anything more nefarious. A book from 1923 said that the tunnel led westwards towards Cardiff Castle, and there was also a rumour that the tunnel was once used to hide the profits from a bank robbery. Now, it is actually possible that that could be linked to a piece of older folklore, that there was a passage that led from Cardiff Castle out to Castell Coch, and that apparently was supposed to have some English Civil War buried gold hidden in it. So whether this idea of buried treasure in one of the passages has just become like garbled and extended over time or not, obviously I don't know, but that's the kind of thing that does happen with these stories. Another tunnel on Castle Street was believed to lead to the castle, and you'd think the clue in the name would be quite a good one there. But this particular tunnel was actually found in the basement of the Angel Hotel, and that was actually uncovered by builders by accident, and it was also filled with water as well, so it clearly hadn't been used in some time. This site was originally a private family residence of the De Clare family, so people did think that the tunnel connected the home with the castle. And given the De Clares at one point did have links with Cardiff Castle itself, that would indeed make sense. People often think of tunnels as being there for something nefarious, but sometimes you could have tunnels if it was just going to be quicker to get from A to B without having to use roads, particularly if you consider how congested roads may have been in earlier centuries. Or it could well be that they were just simply used for servants to get about more quickly. It doesn't always have to be nefarious, because when you consider the amount of effort that would be required to actually build a tunnel, you would sort of only build one if you actually needed one, not just for sort of the funsies of having a tunnel. At least that's my understanding of it anyway. But Cardiff Castle also has tunnels within its walls as well, which are really cool. And these were used as makeshift air raid shelters during the Second World War, and apparently over 1,800 people could actually fit into them. And the network was so extensive that it also included toilets, kitchens, bunks and first aid posts, and that's all within the walls, which I thought was really interesting, because we often think of tunnels as being underground, but I suppose when you consider how thick the walls of a castle would be, it would make sense that you could put tunnels through them. But yeah, so if you've been in the Cardiff Castle tunnels, obviously please do let me know about them. But we are going to finish up this episode. We're going to sort of kind of keep with ghosts, but also look at a bit of water folklore, because that's a particular favourite of mine. And these are a couple of legends of the River Taff itself, which obviously flows through Cardiff. Now, it passes near a place called Llandaff, where 2 female ghosts are said to spend their time. The first apparently appears to date to around about the 1860s, but again, these things are difficult to verify, and her son sadly drowned in the river. So the grief-stricken woman has been seen drifting along the river banks as if she's still searching for her son. And she's also seen a little bit further up the banks at Llandaff Cathedral as well. The other ghost is named as Bella. There's not really a huge amount about her, but apparently her husband ran a tavern, and his method of running it affected her so badly that she ended up throwing herself into the river. So I can't help thinking the husband may have had a little bit more going on than just poor business management for you to do that. But there we go. It's nice that we've at least got a name, but there's not really that much more to go on. So if you do know any more about her, please do let me know. But the most famous legend associated with the river is related to its whirlpool, and according to Marie Trevelyan, and we do sometimes have to be a little bit suspicious about the kind of folklore that she contains, because as I've learned from Dr. Dallas Badder and Mark Norman's book on the folklore of Wales, Marie Trevelyan can be a little bit fond of embellishing things, but it's still worth including stuff that she's got, because it does obviously then still say something about the time in which it was produced. But according to her, at one point the whirlpool was known as one of the 7 wonders of Glamorgan, and even when the riverbed was almost dry, the whirlpool apparently still formed a small lake. People claimed it was bottomless, as people nearly always will with bodies of water, and a huge serpent apparently lived in a cavern in its depths. Even worse, if anyone drowned in the river, they would be sucked into the whirlpool, and people believed that the serpent would swallow any of those that weren't recovered. By comparison, if a person's body did bob to the surface, it was assumed that the person had been very good, because the serpent would not touch the corpse of the righteous. It isn't the only danger to be faced in the whirlpool, because another story concerned a beautiful woman who apparently bathed in the pool. Now she'd lure youth towards her with her beauty, and then they were sucked into the whirlpool, never to be seen again. And one old woman actually claimed the temptress was the devil in disguise. And I think that this particular story at the end is a very good example of that kind of cautionary tale that you get to try and keep people away from something dangerous by adding an even bigger danger in front of it. So what are you more likely to avoid? A woman who might sort of drag you to your depths, or a whirlpool? I mean, I guess in a way, now I'm thinking about it, I still think a whirlpool is kind of dangerous enough in and of itself, but I suppose it could also then explain why people might get a little bit too close to the whirlpool, like just to have a look at it, because you know what people are like. And then the idea of this woman luring them in then kind of helps to explain somewhat foolhardy behaviour on the part of anybody who's near. In terms of the whirlpool regurgitating some bodies and not others, again, there's probably some kind of actual physics explanation of that kind of thing, but obviously it would then be an explanation to have this serpent living there deciding who's righteous and who's not. That would kind of explain something that people possibly wouldn't have understood, in not necessarily in the same way that we do, but they might not have understood the mechanics behind why some bodies surfaced and some others didn't, and so on. So I think it's quite interesting that you've got all this stuff to do with the River Taff. And I actually wonder, and I don't know where the whirlpool is, because she's not particularly specific. All I know is it is in Cardiff. If it's actually anywhere near where this boy drowned, or if they're just completely unrelated stories. I'm not entirely sure. But again, if you know more, then please do feel free to let me know. I think what we can see from these stories from Cardiff is the ghost stories do sound somewhat similar to ghost stories that I've covered before. The phantom coach announcing the death of a family member. I do actually have an example of a story of that in the Phantom Coaches episode, so that's a story motif that appears elsewhere. The idea of ghosts walking through walls, I mean, that's just ghosts, isn't it? You know, that's fairly standard behaviour from them. And I think the idea of the stockroom being rearranged, again, that almost sounds like it could be a brownie to an extent, but I think the idea of them having a name for this faceless woman is also very interesting. The one, as I say, that really, really catches my attention more than anything else is the hospital. So if anyone knows any more about some of those stories, please let me know. But I think it is also quite interesting that the matron doesn't seem massively malicious. And the woman in the corridor actually kind of seems a little bit oblivious to the security guard. So that's quite an interesting sort of thing to put together as well. But I think one thing that did stand out for me, and there may still be stories of them that I just haven't come across, but I didn't find any stories of monks that were kind of front and centre. And normally when you have the remains of monasteries, there's usually some kind of stories of monks attached to them. And that wasn't the primary thing that came out from the stories connected to the monasteries. It was actually the secret tunnels. And again, I think any tunnel that's just simply been forgotten about inherently becomes quite mysterious and inherently becomes quite spectacular almost, because people have forgotten about it, or people just don't know what it was there for because it was made so long ago. So I think that folklore around tunnels usually ends up boiling down to it was used for nefarious purposes, stuff was hidden in it. It kind of boils down to one or the other. But I think what makes the ones in Cardiff even more exciting is the fact that because it could be either of them and nobody knows, it sort of makes them even more exciting. So I hope that you enjoyed that little detour through Cardiff folklore. As I say, if you've got any other bits and pieces you want to share with us, feel free to. And again, if you know anything about that exorcism in the pathology ward, please do let me know. We're going to finish off with Belfast next week. So I've already been collecting some from some friends of mine who live in Belfast. And obviously, again, if you've got any specifics that you'd like me to cover, please do let me know, and that'd be awesome. Hopefully you spotted the Fabulous Folklore Presents episode that came out on Wednesday with Dr. Shepherd Siegel, where we were looking at trickster folklore. So if you've been interested in archetypes in particular, but you really want to know more about the trickster archetype, then please do feel free to check that out. Obviously that's just like the previous episode to this one in the main feed. And I also appeared on the White Witch podcast as well, talking to Carly, the excellent host, about rebel folklore and basically all kinds of things that you get in a typical chat between two folklore nerds. So I've also put the link to that one below as well. So if you want to find out a quick definition of folklore, which folklore practices I actually follow, but also which of the rebel folklore characters, and that's my forthcoming book, I enjoyed looking at the most, then that's the interview for you. Anyway, I've waffled on long enough now, so I hope that you've got plenty to keep you entertained for the forthcoming days, and I will see you next week when we have a look at Belfast folklore. Cheerio. Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, because that helps other people find the show too. It also takes between 4 and 6 hours to research, write, record and edit these episodes, so if you want to help support my time in doing that, then you can buy me a coffee, or you can join the Fabulous Folklore family on Patreon and enjoy extra benefits, including exclusive episodes and articles and even illustrated talks. All the links you need are below, and thanks in advance.